Long before flowers colored the world, before even the oldest forests took root, there were ferns, ancient plants of shadow and silence, growing quietly beneath the trees. They carried no visible seeds, no obvious flowers, and for centuries, people believed there was something deeply mysterious about them. Hidden knowledge, invisible power, secrets belonging not entirely to our world, but to the old wild places between. Join us as we take a glimpse at the story of the ferns.
Welcome back, you beautiful people, to another episode of The Enchanted Wood. And again, we're in the workshop, and today we're discussing the fern. And the fern is by far one of the oldest unchanged plants that we have in our forests. They certainly have been around for millions of years before we ever arrived, and their folklore and mystery is one that fascinated our ancestors. Ferns are really interesting and were interesting to our ancestors for a lot of reasons. Firstly, the places that they inhabited were very mysterious and they were very liminal, and I say that word a lot, and we say that word a lot when we're talking about forests and plants and trees, about things guarding liminal spaces, and a liminal space is a space between worlds. It's a boundary, it's a threshold. It marks the transition from one reality to the next. And it's been made famous at the moment by a film called The Backrooms. And it is that space in between. And the fern sits right in that boundary. It occupies that space, I think, more than any other plant that we have. In my previous episode of the bramble, we talked about how the bramble was a threshold plant. It guarded the threshold. It occupied threshold liminal spaces such as hedgerows that mark the boundary between one transition and next. But it guarded with force. It guarded through the thorn. It was a protector through force. Whereas the fern, the places that it hides, they are secretive, and that is the key to its folklore, its secrets. It holds its secrets well, and the places that it inhabits are the dark places, the damp places, the inaccessible places in the forests. When you think of ferns, you think of it growing by water. Think about it growing at the edges of caves, at cave entrances. It occupies those spaces that are dark, damp, and somewhat inaccessible. The fern itself is associated with water, whereas the bramble was very masculine with its phallic thorns. The fern is more feminine, it's softer, and its association with water and growing beside rivers and streams and ponds, and in damp places. It has a very feminine energy about it. There is that nature of secrecy, and the fern holds its secrets well, and that's part of its folklore. And it's a very magical plant, and it's a very magical plant because of its secrecy. Our ancestors, they couldn't see how it reproduced, and it's not bold, it's not brash, it sits. It doesn't have flowers, it's very subtle, it's green, so it doesn't have bright flowers to attract insects. And because it doesn't pollinate, our ancestors would find that it would just spring up from out of nowhere, that because it didn't have pollinating insects to spread its seed, and because you couldn't see the seed, it was a very magical plant and a very mysterious plant, and it became synonymous with secrets, with magic, and its seed especially was sought after. So in northern traditions, the seed and its secrecy was highly sought after, and it's said that if you were to go searching for the seed, that it was only appear on Midsummer's night, and only for a few hours. And if you were to pick the seed, and you were to pick the seed incorrectly, then a misfortune would befall you. But the seed itself was highly sought after. William Shakespeare wrote in Henry IV that they have the seed, now they become something about them becoming invisible. I can't remember the exact quote, I'll put it on the screen. But the seed was highly sought after because it contained, or was believed to contain, magic properties of being able to turn the holder of it invisible, and to give them secret knowledge and secret magical abilities such as invisibility. It was said to hold great knowledge, ancient knowledge, because of its age. It was said to be a protector of secrets, and that seed was a key to that. And because they couldn't see the seed, were highly sought after. Because our ancestors didn't realise that the fern actually, it germinates, or rather it spreads by small spores, thousands of them, tens of thousands of them, that were kept underneath the throngs of the fern. And these spores would be spread by the wind. They would open up and the spores would spread. So the fern would just magically appear from nowhere. There was no understanding of, because the seed or the spores were so tiny to the naked eye, our ancestors cherished that as a magic ability of the plant. In many northern traditions, the fern held that association with hidden knowledge, of holding its secrets, but it was also a great protector as well. But it didn't protect like the thorn. It held its secrets in a much softer, shrouded, kind of cloaked way. When we see ferns in forests, they're often in dense carpets, and that dense carpet also held a danger, because the fern, with it being a liminal plant, with it occupying that space between worlds, it was often associated with fairies and the fae. Now, I'm sure you all know that our modern interpretation of the fairy, or the fae folk, has very been influenced by Hollywood and Disney especially. But briefly, to our ancestors, the fae weren't Tinkerbell. The fae were often to be feared. They were mischievous. If you wronged the fae in any way, then you would suffer the consequences. They could be very fickle and very vengeful. And with the fern being a liminal plant and occupying those liminal spaces, the fae were said to dwell within them. And there were traditions and folklores and warnings of parents telling children not to go off the beaten path and to get lost within the ferns and not to fall asleep within them, because, well, the fae occupied them. But in saying that, the fern it's always held a special place with us. And during the 1800s, Victorian women made a pastime for collecting ferns, and they would go out of their way to seek like different varieties of them and rare varieties of them. But we have an association with the fern as well, of that I think dates back to our ancestors, our ancient ancestors. We keep ferns in our bathrooms. That's a private space. We have them on our wallpapers. We keep them in our offices, and they have a very calming nature. There is something very calming about the fern. And some ferns, like bracken, were used for bedding. It was used to soften influences It was hung above doors, much like bramble and other trees, as a protection. And it wasn't to ward off, but it was to soften influences as they passed through them, as they passed through that threshold. It was to soften evil influences. To burn ferns would be to banish our negative energies and to soften negative energies. So it has a very feminine nature about it, whereas the thorn of the bramble that occupies those same spaces, that's very forceful, it's very aggressive. The thorn protects through strength, and it heals through strength, it guards through strength, whereas the fern, it softens, it nurtures, it gives hidden knowledge from its ancient past. It's been used for protection against thunderstorms. It has healing abilities as well, and has been used for medicines, because there are a family of ferns. They're not just one type of plant. There's bracken, there's male ferns, there's female ferns, there's several different types, and they each have their own medicinal purposes. Some are used to cleanse out gastric worms. I'm sure you can tell how that would work. Others would be used for aiding in sleep, in dream work, much like mugwort. So it has many uses. The maidenhair fern, for example, can be used as a cough remedy to aid and assist in respiratory ailments. It can also be used for burn treatments. The ash after the fern has been burned can be turned into a poultice to be rubbed on burns as a skin treatment. They can be used to as a hair treatment, as a scalp treatment, to soften, and we keep going back to the fern softens. It protects in a very loving kind of way, but it also has, with it having that liminal element to it and occupying a liminal space, you never quite know what can happen once you cross the threshold into liminal spaces. So there's also a warning with it as well. There's a danger that would go there. There's a mystery, and that mystery is part of the fern's magic and why it was sought after and why it was revered, because it had been around for millions of years. It held ancient knowledge, and to seek the fern in those liminal spaces gave you that reward of those secrets, of secret knowledge, of lost knowledge. And the seed granted you hidden knowledge. It granted you that power, that gift of hidden knowledge. But it was really difficult and quite a quest to actually find the seed. If the fern wasn't picked properly, if the fern wasn't picked correctly, it's said that great misfortune or injury could occur, and the seed would disappear, never to be seen again. If you didn't pick them properly, it was said to incite thunderstorms, which in this massive amount of heat that we're having at the minute, the thunderstorm would be quite welcome, because it is sweltering. So yes, the fern represents secret knowledge. It can be used to soften influences. Its seed is highly sought after and could grant the ability to turn invisible, which gave rise to, you could eavesdrop on people, you could gain secrets through that. The hidden knowledge of our ancestors was said to be held within it. It has fertility meaning, secret fertility, because nobody knew how it reproduced. It didn't produce flowers, it just magically arrived. So there's the secret power of fertility within it. It softens negative energies, and for spiritual cleansing and washing, it's good for that. And I think it's still it's still quite a potent little plant in our world. I think maybe we've forgotten the reason why we have them in our houses and in our gardens, because our garden centres are full of them. We have them on wallpapers. Like I say, in our bathrooms, we associate them with those private places, those places of water, and places with water, rivers, streams, caves, they're liminal places. So perhaps with putting the fern in our bathrooms, we've turned our bathroom into a secret liminal space. We bathe in the waters for purification, to relax, to soothe ourselves, and the fern does that, but with a warning. And as with all of these plants, with all of our forest folklore, there's always a warning. There's always a reward that comes at a price. So that is my small take on the fern. It sits guarding our past. It lays there just quietly. It's not flashy. It's not look at me. It just is, swaying in the soft breezes, silently just holding its secrets. And whenever you walk past them in the forest and you look through them, don't you just wonder what's in there, what's through their thorns? And don't you feel drawn into there? There's a part of your brain, there's a part of your mind that thinks, what's on the other side of that? That wants to pull you in, that draws you into it, to maybe lose a part of yourself. Anyway, thank you for watching. If you've got this far, most people don't. I'm still a very small channel. I'm still trying to find my way, still trying to work out what works, what doesn't. I hope you like the new format of me walking, and I definitely feel more at home. And I hope you're liking the new set of my workshop. This is actually a working workshop. But yes, thank you for watching. If you've got that this far, please give the usual support. My name's Mark. This is the Enchanted Wood, and until next time, as always, stay enchanted.
The old forests kept many secrets, and some, perhaps, still sleep beneath the fern-covered floor, waiting for those willing to slow down enough to notice them. So, the next time you find yourself walking past their silent slumber, ask yourself, what secrets lay beyond, hidden and forgotten? And take heed not to lose a part of yourself if you choose to venture into their embrace.